down. All right. Welcome to the Bronx COVID-19 Oral History Project. We got a special interview here today with student, artist, writer, man of the people, and my friend, Lionel Spencer. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
So, just to start it off, you're a hip-hop fan, and I was just wondering, if you were to give your life until this point an album title, what would it be?
My life and album title. That's a good one. Maybe another Spencer story.
All right. You want to explain it or just?
I have 5 brothers, and we're very close. And so I feel like my life story, it has to be understood in connection with theirs. So it's another Spencer story. It's not the Spencer story, right? No, it's
Another story. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your family, like how you came to be in the Bronx and your family.
Well, I was born in the Bronx, born and raised in the Bronx. My dad was born in New York City. Where exactly? I'm not sure. I want to say maybe Harlem. My mother was born in Savannah, Georgia. My father's people, or some of my people, are from North Carolina, the Beaufort County area, specifically a small town named Pantego. And my mother's family was pretty much from Savannah, Georgia. So my grandparents, born and raised in North Carolina, at some point decided to move to New York City for various reasons. Some of them were, associated with oppression and run-ins with the KKK. So they thought it best to move to New York City to kind of raise their children, my dad and my aunts. As the story is on my mother's side, I actually don't know. I actually have no clarity as to why they decided to move to New York and leave Savannah, Georgia. But they came. My mother and father met in the Bronx in New York City, married and started having kids. And one of those kids was. So that's how we ended up in New York, in the Bronx specifically.
Mm-hmm. So from the very beginning, you've seen the Bronx over time, right? Since you were born, changed as time goes on, and you had your brothers as well. How integral were they in this whole story that we were talking about?
They're very essential to the story and to my story because, pretty much any challenging aspect of my life is also a challenging aspect of their lives. So, so to speak, we've gone through battles and war together. So, and I'm the second to the youngest, so I have 4 older brothers, which means a lot of teaching and way of living was passed down to me through them. I think they're, I'm like what I like to call myself, a pack animal.
Mm-hmm.
I am part of a group.
Yeah.
I'm part of a group.
I have 4 sisters, so kindred spirits in a way. But I'm the only boy, so I've never had a brother. So I can only imagine. But I understand what you're saying. Pack mentality, most definitely, a lot passed down to me. You're still in contact with them today?
Yes. First, I want to apologize. They're doing some renovations downstairs. I live in a private house, so they're doing some renovations on the first floor. So there'll be some hammering and maybe some drill noises.
And what happened?
Yes, I am definitely in contact with my brothers. And I think even more so, I know we'll probably get into it more, but we've been more so in contact after my dad's passing because we have to do a lot of planning around, trying to find a way to memorialize him, and realizing that's definitely something we need to do together. That it's not something we can do separately. So we're planning a trip to go to where our grandparents and great grandparents are from, Pantego, to spread his ashes. My dad was cremated. So more recently, in terms of all six of us together, we've been in contact a lot more. But even if it's not all six of us, we're maybe we'll touch base once a week. So that's kind of regular.
That's beautiful. I hope to have that connection as I get older and with my family. I don't want to separate or spread apart, even though we're all over the place. But that's very beautiful to hear that you guys are still close together. So, I mean, we can go right into it, right? Like COVID-19, what was your initial thoughts as this was happening? Because you're living in the Bronx right now in your own house with your family, right?
Yeah.
And so what was your thoughts as it was starting to approach?
So I don't know if this is a product of trauma or age, culture, or whatever, but I tend not to watch a lot of news anymore. I guess at some point I felt like I used to look at news as something that provided me with just facts and truth. And then I realized that wasn't always the case. And in order to get facts and truth, I was going to have to do a lot more work. And so I pretty much decide when I'm going to do that work, and it's not a daily work that I decide to do. Mm-hmm. So when the COVID-19, the coronavirus started hitting the U.S., New York wasn't the first place it hit. And so I wasn't as concerned. The little bits and pieces I'm hearing, I'm reading about it, I wasn't concerned until it really hit the New Rochelle area. Mm-hmm. And then that's when kind of the red flags started going off. And I have some friends who used to live in New York but no longer live in New York calling me like, it's going down. Mm-hmm. It's about to be crazy. You need to get out of New York City. I have one friend who just kind of, he's watched too much Walking Dead. So everything that happened is like, get out of the state, Yeah. So he's calling me like, this is huge. You got to understand the implications, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, yeah, okay. Wow, yeah, I didn't think about that. So I guess that's how alarms started going off for me.
Did you sense that in your community?
No. There was you wouldn't have thought that anyone was alarmed. I mean, I'm thinking the last time I hung out with my dad was, let's say, March 14th or 21st. I want to say around that time. And I think this is before, kind of like the shutdown or the shelter in place or whatever, I forget what it was called. But that hadn't happened yet. So up until like March 20 something, I'm like, this is crazy, but it ain't crazy in New York, right? And then I think all around that time is when, right after maybe let's say March 14th into, um, until now,
Yeah.
I think everything started closing down, right? Because I think it was March, was it March 13th, we were supposed to have my album release, right? And it got shut down because of the coronavirus, right? So around that time is when everything is like, it's starting to really become a bit more clear, like this is an issue um, everywhere in New York, in the Bronx. So yeah, I think that those kind, there were like little points that kind of started saying, hinting or making it very clear that this is a very serious issue.
Hmm. And so um, that happened, right? So March 14th, right? The stay, or whenever the date was, the stay-at-home order, right? So then, what was the reaction in your community then, or your experience? What you saw in your community when things started closing up?
Um, a little bit of panic, I think, like probably a lot of people, but this is not something I've ever experienced, and I don't think most of the people in my communities ever experienced this. So there was a lot of panic, a lot of conversations around like, what do you call those things? Like suspicions, like maybe this is the government doing stuff. Just a lot of different opinions about why we were at where we were at, and so for myself, again, having, school being shut down, and then, church being shut down, and then there's the restriction from like not traveling outside of the state. Um, there's the quarantining of New Rochelle, where people in New Rochelle shouldn't leave New Rochelle. They need to quarantine for 14 days. And I have friends up there. So I think as more information started to get disseminated, and protocols and procedures of what we should need to do, New York strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I think that's when it kind of set in that like this is very serious, and this is not going to change anytime soon. So then it's like trying to get established in the new normal. So it's me, my wife, my son, and my wife's mom. She's been staying with us.
Mm-hmm.
She has pre-existing conditions, so now it's about like, okay, let's make sure we're being smart about how we're moving about, going to the supermarket, doing laundry, whatever the case is.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was and still is difficult, because um, going out for birthdays, anniversaries, just to get a breather, all those things seemed like you're potentially risking your life to go for a stroll. You're potentially risking your life, or someone in your household's life, to go to the supermarket. And I think more and more information, I think, the medical field started to learn more and more. So initially it's like, oh, it's just people of this age. These are the main cases. Be afraid if you're, of this population. And then you learn that it's not just those people. And so that makes the scenario even a lot more scarier, because now I'm thinking about, my own health, the health of my wife, the health of my 1.5-year-old. How much do they really know, right? Because if they're continuing to learn things and communicating new information, it's like we're behind the ball. So just kind of, we need to be smart, shut everything down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just shut everything down. And yeah, I mean, I think that was and still is difficult for a lot of people. I would see a lot of people around. Maybe at the time I was living in an apartment building, people, in the front, like small gatherings in the front.
Mhm.
I think it was very difficult for people to, and still in many cases still is really difficult for people to adjust to not, the not being as social. Um, and so, um, yeah, for me and my house, we just did our best to travel as little as possible. It was really just to do grocery shopping and do laundry.
Mhm.
So those are only two reasons we went out. I had to start going out, after my dad passed because we had to deal with a lot of his things, his actual physical belongings, and then maybe stopping at banks to take care of some of his financials. So I was out a little bit more than maybe my family, but my wife was able to start working from home. She works for the city. Um, my stepmom was able to kind of be safely in the house. So I think we made it through. But I think none of us really knew enough information,
Mhm.
and some of that is if I'm thinking about myself, that some of it is my fault because of how I've began to view news. And so let's say I hang out with my dad the 14th, I think it is.
Mhm.
And then the 21st or so, I get a call from one of my older brothers saying, our dad has been sick. He's like had flu-like symptoms. He hasn't been to work in a while. So then um, we weren't thinking this is coronavirus. We're just thinking he's a little bit under the weather. So I go over and buy him some things that he needs. And then the following week, I get another phone call from my stepmom. He's not getting any better. He's not leaving the house. He's not leaving. He's not even leaving his bed. It's he needs to go to the hospital. So I go over there. I call the ambulance. They come and they check my dad out, and they say, "You're fine. Um,
Mhm.
you're not having trouble breathing. You don't have a fever. Uh, I guess you don't have coronavirus. So we suggest Theraflu, hydrate, stay in the house, quarantine." So they, while I'm walking out with them, I'm saying, so what should, I'm asking them, what should I get? They gave me some things on the list to go get. I run to the store, go get these things for my dad, drop them off, and then leave. This is maybe Thursday or Friday. I can't remember the exact date, but
Mhm.
a Thursday or Friday. And then I get another phone call. He's getting worse. This is like Monday at this point, and let's say this is March 30th or something. I can't remember what Friday that was, but he's not getting any better. He really needs to go to the hospital. So I call the ambulance again. Like they said that, they'll send somebody over. So I go over there 10 in the morning, and they don't come. So I call one of my older brothers. He comes, he meets me at my dad's house, and we get my dad dressed. We and got him in a car and drove him to the hospital. And so he got admitted, and then a couple days later, they confirmed that it was the coronavirus, that he had the coronavirus. And And then a week after that, he passed away. While being in the hospital, it seemed like his health just deteriorated very quickly. And yeah, within like a week from like maybe, let's say if we checked them in Monday, uh, the upcoming Sunday, he passed away. So, again, I don't know if everybody had enough information. I was a bit more, after inquiring, I knew that there was something a little bit off about how things were being handled. I knew that, healthcare professionals, they were overwhelmed. That was something that, after watching enough of de Blasio or Cuomo's briefings, that I knew that that was a reality. And I think that reality was reflected in how my dad was taken care of. But in terms of being able to know whether or not it was the coronavirus, my uncle-in-law, my wife's uncle, he got sick. No fever, no shortness of breath, but super fatigue, laying in the bed, no appetite, throwing up, can't keep anything down, right? But he's in New Jersey.
Mhm.
He calls the ambulance. The ambulance come and get him and take him. And it's confirmed he had coronavirus, right? So he's fine. But that happened, let's say, a week before we check my dad. We go get my dad and bring him into the hospital. So at this point, I kind of know that it's not just about the shortness of breath. It's not just about a fever and a cough and the things that were kind of being communicated via the news, but that it could be these other symptoms and be that as well. So that's why when I got the phone call from my my stepmother, and she's saying he really needs to go, and I knew his symptoms, I was adamant about us, like, if the ambulance can't come get him or won't come get him or whatever the scenario is, that we're going to take him. So it's still, for me, it's this has just been a very surreal experience. And when you start seeing on the news that communities of color are getting hit the hardest, and the Bronx is mentioned, and I guess it's like I was saying, it's kind of novel because I'm born and raised from the Bronx. I don't feel poor. I don't feel oppressed. I don't feel marginalized, though I know what the statistics and the reality is for many people living in the Bronx. And, I didn't necessarily equate my dad's death to us being a part of that marginalized group. But it definitely triggered me to start thinking about that. When I think about just the simple fact that my uncle-in-law was feeling similar symptoms, calls an ambulance and gets picked up. Maybe that's because he's in New Jersey. Maybe it's not really what people are saying it is, or maybe that's exactly what it is. My dad didn't get the treatment that he needed because he was a resident of the Bronx. I'm not saying that as fact, but I'm saying that is I think that can be a truth. That can be exactly what happened. Um, so yeah, it's been a challenging situation altogether, but trying to make our way through it.
Well, I first want to say my condolences to your father and to your family and to everything that happened. Right. I think it personally, I would like to say that something like that is ultimately a tragedy and something that should not have happened. And I have frustration from hearing that story, and I have pain and anguish from hearing that story from you, especially because I know you personally and I know who you are and what you're about as a person and as a family man and as someone that wants to give back to his community and give back to um, give back to your family. It's um, something that's very painful to hear and something that stirs up something within me. So again, from the bottom of my heart and the rest of the team, right, our condolences and that we are with you. And if there's anything that you need from us, right, like we got you. And we appreciate you coming on and sharing the story. It's very difficult as it happened very recently, and I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can't. I've never had that, thank God. But um, something that I can only imagine is very difficult. So
Thanks
yeah,
Carlos, I appreciate it.
yeah. And so that it can be easy to feel to anger, right? And what was fascinating to hear from you is saying, like, you're from the Bronx, you're born and raised, right? You never saw it as you were being oppressed or marginalized or um, being misrepresented, right? But you see the statistics and you see everything that's going on, and um, and now we have nationwide protests that are still occurring in many U.S. cities, right? Who are advocating and fighting for those things, right? That standing up for the marginalized. We're talking about systemic racism. We're talking about institutionalized racism. We're talking about healthcare, right? The right to healthcare for individuals. So, what was that like in your community, or if you want to elaborate more on your family, like your thoughts about what's going on and what's the conversation that's continuing?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say that like the way I functioned up until this point is that I don't like to. It's hard for me to join movements simply because it's um, I found just for myself. It's like it's almost like with voting. You almost never find something that totally represents or reflects who you are. So because of that, it's always been difficult to uh, be able to feel fully safe with either investing or marching alongside um, various movements or people who are trying to do good things. Um, but I kind of pick and choose where I um, kind of march alongside, and so and make sure it's aligned with what I believe. So I organized a Sing for Justice in my community, and um, with the members of my community, some of my people from my church community, um, to sing songs of God, of hope, because I feel um, I felt like that was what the people around me needed, and that's what I needed. So that was my peaceful protest. Uh, One of my brothers planned uh, a barbecue on Juneteenth to bring together members of our community to talk through issues facing our community. And yeah,
What were some of those conversations like, if you don't mind me asking?
um, I think some of it was surrounding how we can better use our finances, uh, use the power of our dollars to make difference.
Mhm.
I think that was one of the main conversations. Um, and boycotting various institutions or organizations. Um, so yeah, so I think it has encouraged and inspired um, for us to align ourselves with the spirit of the time. Uh, but I know that at the time, so I think location is important. At the time, I was living off of Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, off of Pelham Parkway in White Plains. And yeah, there are a lot of minorities over there, but it's not one of the, it's probably more Irish, Italian, Albanian.
Mhm.
So from, maybe there were things going on, but from what I can see, there wasn't much protesting. And, like there weren't any demonstrations in my area.
Mhm.
So,
How did that make you feel?
um, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. um, I don't know because the double-edged sword was that um, maybe a week before I did the Sing for Justice, there was the protest down Fordham,
Mhm.
and some people, either part of or not a part of the protest, damaged a lot of property um, down Fordham Road. So there was a real fear that those whoever these people were in these groups were going to actually make their way down Pelham Parkway in White Plains. So our neighbor actually told me this. Hey, where did you park your car? You might want to park place because I hear some of these people are coming to our neighborhood to loot. So at that time, I didn't really, I don't know, I didn't know what to think,
Mhm.
about people protesting or not protesting
Yeah.
because all of the protesting didn't seem, for the lack of a better word, maybe organized.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, the people in my community, at least in my building, because building is not for community, meet people, talk with people. Some of those people lost people, and were very generous. Wrote me and my family cards. So, I guess it's for me, it's probably it's very honest for me to say that it's hard to have the emotional energy to care about that after such a huge loss like my dad.
Mhm.
So I think that, yeah, I don't know how much I was thinking about all of those things and processing all those things on even now,
Mhm.
because taking care of my family and helping my family through this time has been my number one focus.
And how are they doing through all this? Your wife and your son.
Um, they're they're maintaining.
Hmm.
I think the more challenging times is, because of one being having to take care of my dad, and then being kind of the one who's going out to do whatever needs to be done for the house. I've had to isolate several times,
Hmm.
sometimes, and not knowing, just trying to be safe. Not necessarily feeling any symptoms, but trying to be safe because I knew I came in contact like with my dad at the time, or sometimes feeling some symptoms, feeling like some shortness of breath, and like, oh, what is this? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that's difficult because me and my wife have a rhythm. We have, a schedule, and she's working from home. So if I'm isolated, that means she's working from home and trying to kind of take care of our son. Our stepmom helps out as much as she can, but yes, it falls a lot more falls on her. So I think that's been the most difficult part. And then I think for my son, it's just like I'm not there. Like, I'm not there for however long time I'm quarantined. And he sees me, he can't hug me, he can't touch me.
Yeah.
That's those have been very painful situations and times for me when he's reaching out to give me a hug, and I'm like, I can't, sorry.
Yeah.
Starts crying. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I've had to quarantine about 3 times.
Wow.
So um, the good thing is, first time they weren't testing anybody, right? And I think the last 2 times I was able to get tested. So I didn't have to quarantine 14 days all 3 times. The first time, yes, 14 days. And then the second time, maybe 10. And then the third time, 4 days. But it
Wow.
was, testing was more available, readily available. So I was able to run and go get tested.
Mhm.
So, the second time I wasn't feeling any symptoms, but I knew I had came in contact with someone who had the coronavirus. So I went and got tested, but the test took about 7 to 10 days. So, and then the most recent time was like last week. Last week I was feeling some shortness of breath, and so yeah, I isolated, and then I went and got tested, and the test was going to take 7 to 10 days, and I was able to actually get to a clinic that could give you rapid results.
Yeah.
So I went and got tested again, and got my results the same day, and it came back negative. So interesting enough, and maybe it's stress, but like shortness of breath, and I'm like, yo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can never be too careful, right? Yeah.
And not that that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just a strange time.
Yeah. Most definitely. How many times did you get tested?
Or
4 times. Wow. Man, that's. Whew. I haven't even gotten tested once. Yeah.
it's 3 times. Three
3 times.
times.
Okay.
This time I didn't get tested. They wouldn't take me.
And
So
and all the times you've gotten tested, it was local, your
um,
community.
hmm, no.
Okay.
Uh, None of the times I got tested was even in. Let me see. there, there. Yeah, I don't think I got tested once in the Bronx.
Okay.
Place that they directed me was, I think I went somewhere in Mount Vernon recently. Uh, I went to, what was that test taken? Maybe that one was in the Bronx. Where am I? Where am I? There's one test I can't remember, but the two tests, one was in New Rochelle, one was in Mount Vernon. And there's one test that I can't remember right now where it was.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's wow.
Oh, yes. It was, now I remember, it was at an urgent care off of Pelham Parkway in White Plains.
Okay. So in the Bronx. Got it. Let's say we could pull something up there too, right? Like talk about testing in the Bronx and implications of that. But yeah. And your family, your brothers, are they all local? They're all in New York?
All in New York, not New York City.
Yeah.
One of my brothers lives in Binghamton, New York, but all in New York City. And yeah, I mean, depending on where you live, this is all a very different experience. So my brother,
Yeah.
his experience has been a little bit different. My brother who lives in Queens, his experience has been a little bit different. I have two brothers who live in Manhattan or the Harlem area. Their experience is probably more similar to mine. And a brother who lives actually off of Fordham Road, so he actually was able to see a lot of the damage that was done in his own community. So yeah, I think it's been different, and in some cases similar, but I think they're all doing a lot better. I think we all have been sobered, if we weren't already, by the coronavirus. So we're all doing our best to take the right precautions for ourselves and for our loved ones.
And then, so bit of a different question, but what music have you been listening to get through all this?
What music? Um, so I've been listening to Kamashi Washington. He's produced or scored the soundtrack for Michelle Obama's Becoming documentary. And so that soundtrack has been incredible. Robert Glassford scored soundtrack for, what's the name of the movie? A real recent movie with Issa Rae and I can't remember his first name, but something Keith. The Photograph. And so I think I've been listening to those two soundtracks a lot. I love it. It's just beautiful jazz. I listen to my own music because I feel like it speaks back to me.
Mm-hmm.
For
those of you who are listening for the first time, CLS_10451 put out his new album, CLS, in March of 2020. What a time to put out an album, right? Yeah. So what's the response been with that?
That's been varied. The response has been varied. Music is a very personal thing, and if something speaks to you, then you speak about it. If something doesn't speak to you, you speak little of it. And so there's a little bit of each, where for some people it's music that really speaks to them, so they have a lot to say. For other people, it doesn't do anything for them. So that's it's fair. It's just like anything else. So.
Cool.
I think most recently I shared the project with an artist, an activist, and a creator by the name of Akur Naru. And she actually came and performed at Fordham last spring, I think it was. And yeah, I mean, she seemed to like what she was hearing, and it's always a huge compliment when an artist that you respects your music. So that was really nice.
Awesome. Yeah, that's, I've listened to the album multiple times. I support it. I'm going to put it on the website right after this interview is live so everyone can give it a listen.
Thank you.
That'll be great. All right. And to end off, right, do you have any words of advice for the people, people of the Bronx, people who are listening to this going forward?
Wow. Gotta speak to the people. Jeez.
Yeah.
I would just say be hopeful and diligent. I think those are the two things that have been helping me, is to be hopeful and be diligent. Don't be passive about things that need to be taken care of, and in that I'm talking about our health, but I'm also talking about justice. We need to be diligent about those things and not procrastinate, but be hopeful, because the pursuit of justice or taking care of our communities and health without hope, I feel like leads to chaos. So I know hope helps to ground me, because it gives me vision that things can be better, will be better if I take these particular steps. So yeah, I would just say be hopeful, be diligent, and praise God.
Amen. Mr. Lionel Spencer, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. Keep doing the work you guys are doing. It's one of the reasons why I like the BHP. That's, why I do what I do with the BHP, because, the Bronx needs this kind of attention and love. And so I think this project is doing that. It's bringing attention and it's showing love. And I'm so grateful for you guys for doing this.
We appreciate you being here.